Every single case leaves behind some form of evidence, right? Every mystery leaves behind questions. But today's explainer, well, it isn't about your standard criminal. Some guys rob banks, others vanish into the shadows, but only one man hijacked a commercial airplane, collected a massive ransom, and then just plummeted straight into the dark abyss of history. Today we're looking at the chilling, entirely factual story of a literal phantom. The world knows him only as D.B. Cooper, and more than 50 years later, his story remains America's greatest unsolved hijacking. So, what actually happens when a hijacker simply vanishes into thin air? I mean, how does a man board a commercial flight, execute a highly coordinated hijacking, secure hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then disappear without leaving a single trace behind? It's like a giant puzzle that has haunted investigators for over half a century. And today, we're going to break down exactly how he did it. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, a ticket to nowhere. Picture this. It's November 24th, 1971. A man using the name Dan Cooper purchases a one-way ticket for Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305. He boards in Portland, Oregon, bound for Seattle. Shortly after takeoff, a note is delivered. The plane lands in Seattle to release the passengers, takes off again bound for Mexico, and it all culminates in a shocking mid-air jump at 8:13 p.m. This whole thing was a rapid, ticking clock scenario that unfolded in just a matter of hours. But who exactly was the man setting this terrifying chain of events into motion? Well, he wore a dark business suit, a white shirt, a black tie, and sunglasses. He quietly ordered a bourbon and soda. Honestly, Dan Cooper's appearance was completely ordinary. There was absolutely nothing suspicious about him. He looked like any other traveling businessman, which creates this truly stark, chilling contrast with the massive crime he was about to commit. Section 2. The Threat and the Ransom. Just minutes after takeoff, he hands a flight attendant a note. Now, at first, she actually thought he was just flirting and slipping her his phone number. But then he calmly delivered these words. "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." And to prove it, Cooper briefly popped open his briefcase, revealing to the terrified flight attendant what appeared to be live explosives. Cooper's demands were incredibly specific. He wanted $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck waiting on the tarmac in Seattle. The airline immediately contacted the FBI. So the crucial point is, authorities made a definitive choice. They agreed to meet every single demand without hesitation, prioritizing the absolute protection of the passengers on board. $200,000. In 1971, that was a massive ransom amount. Upon landing in Seattle, true to the agreement, the ransom and the parachutes were delivered to the aircraft. And because the authorities complied, all of the passengers were safely released. The terrifying hostage situation seemed to be de-escalating. But in reality, for the small flight crew left on board with Cooper, the nightmare was really just beginning. Section 3, Jumping into the Storm. Now, Cooper's flight instructions to the crew were highly unusual and highly specific. He ordered the plane to fly toward Mexico, but it had to remain at a very low altitude. And even more bizarrely, he demanded that the rear staircase of the Boeing aircraft be lowered right in mid-flight. The aircraft is crossing over the dense, rugged forests of Washington state. The weather outside is violent. It's pouring rain. It's pitch black. And then, somewhere around 8:13 p.m., Dan Cooper opens those rear stairs. He steps out into the roaring wind, carrying the ransom money, and just leaps into the freezing darkness. And no one ever saw him again. Section 4. Operation Norjack. The FBI immediately launched Operation Norjack, which were short for Northwest Hijacking. The sheer scale of this manhunt was immense. We are talking about military aircraft, helicopters, and federal agents scouring unforgiving terrain. I mean, they dragged rivers, they hiked through dense, dangerous mountains, and they combed the forests, searching for literally any sign of a man or a parachute falling from the sky. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the complete and utter lack of evidence, despite that massive multi-agency search through the wilderness. No body was found, no parachute recovered. The FBI investigated literally thousands of suspects over the years, resulting in 0 conclusive identifications. It was as if Dan Cooper had just been swallowed up by the storm. Section 5. The Only Clue. Fast forward to 1980. An 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram is having a family outing along the banks of the Columbia River. While just digging around in the sand, he unearths bundles of deteriorating, rubber-banded bills. This was the very first, and honestly the only, physical break in the entire investigation. The boy had found $5,800. When we contrast this measly amount against the initial $200,000 ransom, it's just a tiny fraction, right? But the FBI confirmed the serial numbers on those decaying bills perfectly matched the ransom money given to Dan Cooper. It remains the only confirmed physical evidence ever recovered. The rest of the money? It has never been found. The discovery of that money only fueled the fire, splitting investigators and true crime fans right down the middle with two dominant theories. Theory 1. Cooper died during the incredibly dangerous, freezing wilderness jump, and the money simply washed downriver over time. Versus Theory 2. He somehow survived the treacherous conditions, escaped the perimeter, buried some of the cash to throw them off, and went on to start a completely new life. Section 6. Legacy of a Ghost. Because of this single hijacking, American aviation was changed forever. Airports across the country introduced much stricter passenger screening protocols, and this brilliantly illustrates his enduring impact. Aircraft were physically modified with a brand new device known as the Cooper vane. It's a mechanical lock that absolutely prevents rear aircraft staircases from ever being opened mid-flight again. The case has inspired countless books, films, and independent investigations over the decades. But sadly, the official timeline comes to a pretty frustrating end. In 2016, the FBI officially closed its active investigation into D.B. Cooper. So we have to ask you the ultimate question. Did he perish in the cold wilderness that night? Or did D.B. Cooper actually pull off the perfect crime? As we look at the facts, the suspects, and the sheer audacity of the crime, we're left with nothing but shadows. The man known as D.B. Cooper stepped off a plane and straight into legend, leaving behind a mystery that will absolutely continue to fascinate the world. Some mysteries are solved, but others, well, they just remain hidden in the darkness.